And I want to say that Simon is very interesting. He used to be, well, sort of politician, I guess you call it, British councillor. And he was elected to office while they knew that he was a contactee and a person who talked about being part, from what I understand, mantis or mantid, depending on how you want to say it, and part human and part reptilian. He has some new developments in that area, so I'm going to let him tell you that story. But without further ado, let me welcome Simon Parks.
Thank you. Well, good morning. Yeah. Just made it. First of all, thank you ever so much for coming along. I'm delighted to see you. Rebecca, in a minute I'm going to ask you to come to the front just to help me to organise some of these bits and pieces. Okay. Slightly different presentation today, based on beautiful Hackney, and you'll see why in a moment. Alright, so passing clouds. This is the picture that many people know from your reasonably successful resistance. And we're going to be talking about the elite, the people who are in power, and why their opinion of ordinary people, which includes everyone in this room, is rather sad. Anyone from the Daily Mail here today? Well, last time I did one, the Mail attended and didn't really like what I said. This is from Passing Clouds. It's a different one, isn't it? I like that. You recognise that maybe from your pictures. Come on. That's okay. Right, so this is Kerry. Kerry doesn't actually like to blow her own trumpet, but I'm going to do that. This is the first time I've spoken Passing Clouds, but Kerry's been here before. Kerry arranges some wonderful conferences. And I'm not saying that Kerry is undervalued, that's not the point, but the point is that if you're dedicated and you are a spiritual person, then you're not used to blowing your own trumpet. So it falls to others of us just to recognise the hard work, the dedication, and the just pure love that Kerry has and puts into everything that she does. And that's what's actually kept her safe. So thank you, Kerry. Okay, now then, I'd just like a show of hands. Those of you who regularly attend Passing Clouds, this is your family, can you put your hands up for me? Right, so everyone else is here new. Alright, well that just shoots down half of my presentation, doesn't it? Okay. So I guess you're fairly familiar with my work and what I stand for. Alright, well then, in which case I'm just going to fly through this, but Hackney is very important to me, as I'll explain in a moment, and that's why I'm brought extra stuff here. It's really important that I recognise the fact that you have come here. Most people watch on YouTube in the comfort of their armchairs. They don't pay an entrance fee, and you know what some of these people say, X or Y, oh, they're just doing the same presentation. I never do the same presentation, but I do my presentation for the audience. Because if you didn't turn up today, and you didn't pay the ticket price here, then those people who sit in the armchairs, never come to venues, and just watch it all on YouTube, well, they wouldn't be able to watch it, would they? So I always look at ways how I can reward your dedication and your love for turning out on a Sunday, supporting Passing Clouds because it needs the support, but also supporting the genre. So one of the ways I do that is, not unusually, to be happy to take questions from you. Those of you who've attended any of my talks before, you know I like to give presents out. I will ask you some questions. They don't have to be right. As long as I like the answer, I'll just call you out, and then you can choose. I've got minerals, some DVDs, Blu-rays, stuff like that. You just choose it. I don't want any money, it's not a raffle. I'm making a demonstration, not to you guys, but to people who watch it on YouTube, that the world of money is just rubbish. We give, we don't have to receive something back. So that's what these are here, but I've got other things I want to show you. So very quickly...
Simon, sorry. If you hold the mic a little further away, 'cause
Wait,
we are
okay.
taping
Can you
this.
hear that all right?
Yeah, it's here.
Okay.
I think they should.
Can you hear?
Yes, speak louder.
Speak louder. I'm not going to speak louder because after an hour and a half I'll be hoarse. But I'll do my very best. All right. Those of you who are not familiar, very interesting family upbringing, and not from a political family as such, but my grandfather was a British consul. He worked for MI6. He was a Freemason till he bought himself out of that. He was instrumental in removing one of the kings of England, who was having an affair with Wallis Simpson. He was one of 6 men who was asked his opinion. And I always make the point that it's really interesting that an unelected monarch is removed by a group of 6 men who themselves were unelected. And ordinary people, i.e. those who are not the elite, which make up the vast majority of us, had no say in whether the king stayed or go. My grandfather did. So need to understand then that I came from that's really good, brilliant. Need to understand that I came from a background where politics, statesmanship, things being talked about that you wouldn't read in the newspaper. My mother worked for MI5, but both my mother and my grandfather weren't really working for either the British Security Service, MI5, or the SIS, Secret Intelligence Service, which is the correct term for MI6. They were actually working for the Americans, so the National Security Agency or the CIA. So I came from a background that was going to be heavily influenced. Now, the Avengers, 1965 to 1967, with Diana Riggan, this was a television program that I was forced to watch. Forced, not physically, but it was understood that I had to watch the Avengers, to watch the episodes that Diana Rigg played in. And 5 months ago, I had a communication from a woman whose father worked for the CIA in America, and she, when she was 8 years old, had to do the same. So here we have a television program that was part and parcel of some form of training or some form of culture that those sort of organisations wanted children to watch, and that's very interesting. This is Diana Rigg in the episode called A Touch of Brimstone, which banned in America for 10 years because of the whipping scene in it. You can get it obviously available now. Very interesting, Dame Diana, as she is now, the only costume that she ever designed herself was that one. And it's really interesting because if you look at her collar, she's got spikes on it, so it's more than 10 years before punk actually came out. So she was well ahead of the game there, wasn't she? She's holding a snake, so that tells us very much of the agenda that's going on here. And she has her lead around her neck. So that's a picture. I have here a picture of her that was signed. It's almost identical, the same picture. I met her in 1967, given the picture on the right, which is why it's so tatty, and then I've got a friend to get the more modern one on the right. You can have a look at that later. It's very interesting because she was used unwittingly, as so many people are, to carry messages. Very difficult for women back in the 60s to break into a TV serial. And just like my mother, she joined MI5 because they promised her 2 salaries. Single parent, and you get offered 2 salaries, you do it. Richard Bradford. My grandfather really liked Richard Bradford. He played the role of man in a suitcase. He played a disgraced CIA agent, and my grandfather really wanted me to be like him. My mother and my grandfather would argue quite a lot over who I should be role modelled. This is a picture, but I was able to get one from him personally. I've got him signed, and it's really lovely because he's a very spiritual man. I wish you peace, love and happiness, Richard Bradford McGill, playing the McGill. So exactly the same picture, but that one's signed. And sadly, he passed away earlier this year, so that's a great shame. A very good actor. So while my grandfather wanted me to be very much or model myself on Richard Bradford, my mother wanted me to model myself on Patrick McGoohan. You may well know him from the Prisoner series. but it was the Danger Man series that was most important because that was modelled on MI6. And yeah, you guessed it. That's the same picture, but I got him to sign it for me. So that's nice to have a look at that. These are important people because they were important people in my life. So before the age of 12, I was already, in this program of understanding that there were certain people who were portraying roles, and they were being coached. In the Prisoner series, one of McGowan's best friends who actually had worked for MI5 during the Second World War, and there's a big argument as to who, what, where and when in terms of whose real idea was it. Okay, first prize time, who's that?
Jesse Owens.
Come on. You got it right. Come on, come and get a present. Yes, come on. Come on. You haven't been to one of mine before.
I don't know.
Do you want to choose something?
Yeah, thank you. Danger Man.
Yeah.
I've got Danger Man
Have you?
complete.
Good.
Yeah. I love Amethyst. I'll have that.
That's fine.
Thank you.
That's fine. Pleasure. Yeah, take the box. Jesse Owens. The reason Jesse Owens is here is because my grandfather attended the 1936 Olympics in Germany as a statesman, and my grandfather always used to say to me he was sitting, I suppose, where I am to the giraffe. So that's where my grandfather was in relation to Hitler, and said you should have seen Hitler's face when Jesse Owens won. Absolutely huge anger, and anyone who attended the 1936 Olympics got a badge, and my grandfather's badge showing that. I have to do this because there are people who say, well, you're making it up, you never did that, he never did that. It's really quite odd. That's the badge, so you can have a look at that. I'm sorry about the emblem on the front, but it's a piece of history. We don't like it, but it's history. Brandenburg Gate, during the fall of Germany, when the Russians broke in, some of the victory elements are made of bronze, and all the shells falling, part of it got smashed up. And some of it was collected, and my grandfather was presented with a bronze Brandenburg Gate made from the metal from the victory at the top. So my grandfather was very, very involved. He met Joseph Stalin, he met JFK. He was quite an armchair mover and shaker. He wasn't a field man, he didn't go out and do that sort of thing. He wasn't James Bond. Kerry's right, and I'll explain a bit more. This is my time in Whitby, where I live at the moment, and before I was elected as a Labour councillor in Whitby, I'd come across in a shop a birthday card with my photograph on it, and I bought it when we have a break, you can have a look. I had no recollection of that. I've had the car identified as a Phantom 4 Rolls Royce. I did a lot of work to try and discover any more of it, couldn't. So, and I brought the Whitby Gazette newspaper to show you. That's very kind of you, thank you, appreciate that. So here's the birthday card. Apparently I'm Sir Geoffrey, and I'm about to discover that bears don't just shit in the woods. The bear is representative of a reptilian, and this is obviously placed by MI5 or MI6. Are you all familiar with the card story? You're not familiar with it, I guess, well, some of you are. Just after Christmas, went down to the card factory, and Whitby is a town of 12,000 people, it's really small. So when a new shop opens, everyone goes to look and we'll talk about it. I went there, and I really don't like crowds, and the carousel was a picture, this, cards. And I thought, that's me. What am I doing on a birthday card? So I took it to the cashier and said, how many of these have you got? Because I'd got 6 on the carousel. So she said, I'll go and have a look in the storeroom. So he went to the storeroom, came out, said, well, that's it, I haven't got any more. And she said, that's you. And I said, yes, but I'm not at all happy about it. So I bought the cards, went straight across the road to my solicitor, explained the situation. He looked at it and said, yep. He said, there are only 2 people in England legally who could deal with international intellectual property. One was in London, of course, and the other one I think was in Newcastle. But he said, England's very good in terms of law. Why don't you just get hold of these chief executives? You know, he said, you're a fairly articulate guy. Why don't you do it? So the card factory, I got hold of the chief executive, a really nice guy, who did phone me back in 20 minutes and said, okay, I've bought this picture from, I think it was Paper Chase. So I phoned the chief executive of Paper Chase, another lovely man, got back to me. Yep, I've bought this from, let's just see, they're in America, Paper House. Okay, well, they tend to be an American company, and I spoke to them, but it's a 5-hour difference. And he said, can you prove to me that you are who you say you are? So I emailed some documents. He said, okay, fine. The next question I want to ask you, he said, when do you think that picture was taken? So I said, well, I recognise the tie I'm wearing, I recognise the shirt and the glasses. So I said, I think that's about 1987. To which he said, oh, that's good enough. It's logged as 1986. I've got to take you seriously. So there was about 3 or 4 days of humming and hawing. And then he came back to me and said, well, it was taken by a Jewish guy who lives in Texas. And I said, I've never been to America. So he wasn't being helpful. So I said, look, are you telling me this is not me? Oh no, Mr. Parks, I'm not saying that's not you. What I'm saying is the name on my piece of paper doesn't match the name that you've given me for you. Fine. So I went back to the card factory and said, look, I'm really not happy, I want these pulled. Oh, he said, we've already pulled one. But not because you've complained. I said, okay, right, well, how many of them are there? So he said, oh, we only made 6. So I said 6, it was a test batch. So I said to him, well, how on earth can you tell whether it sells well or not if you only make 6? I said, I've got 6. To which he replied, oh, you've bought our entire stock. So what transpired was that he basically said to me, yeah, we only sent this 6 to one store, your store. So that was a message to me from the security services. And I've got it here, brought it here, and I've got the newspaper. You're very welcome to come up and have a look at that. So my history. I went public with my family life. Also the off-planet interactions that I've had. And then I began to develop that and try to look at how the world was being manipulated, particularly our country. So I was one of the first to break the secret program of indoctrinating children, getting them ready for false flag alien invasion. Those of you who are not familiar with this, both the Tory government and Labour government funded a special program that primary schools could recreate an alien spacecraft crash. Is there any parents here whose children have had that in their school? One. But you don't count because you're already on it. Right. Basically what happens is that the children, they've stopped it now, the children go into the assembly room, they're called in, and they are told that an alien space, I'm not joking you, this is absolutely serious and was going on in England and Wales, but they didn't do it in Scotland. An alien spacecraft has crashed in the playground, and you cannot go out until the police tell us it's safe to do so. Now this picture, when I went public with this, all power to parents who took these pictures without permission and sent them to me. Now some of them are on the internet. And these aren't actors. There has to be a special budget to pay the police force, the fire brigade and the ambulance. They all turn up with their lights and sirens. A person with a supposedly nuclear biological suit comes on, they tape off the playground, and they have already recreated a rather odd-looking spacecraft. This is just one of many. This is for younger children, and here they've recreated, it's hit the ground, made a big gouge, and they've put little flames around it, and the children are just being brought out. So the question is, if UFOs do not exist, why are taxpayers' money paying to teach children to do that? And the best thing I can say to you is that if one day someone says to you, oh, an alien spacecraft has crashed at Dalston Junction, we'd like to come and have a look at it. It ain't real. If the place is surrounded with 3,000 to 4,000 soldiers and you're told there's a curfew, it is real. So why would they do this? Well, if you're 7 and 8 years old, add 20 years to that, if they do a false flag, your framework will say, oh, we did this at school. I know what I have to do. That's what this is all about. And that's been going on in this country for a number of years. Fantastic parent who had a young toddler in a playgroup setting in a nursery, who noticed that all the children, as they do, sit on a rug, and on this rug were lots of multicultural children, except there was a grey alien, a part of the group. She pointed this out to the teacher. The next day, the rug was removed and put by the skip to be thrown out, with a big bin pushed against the section where the alien was. So this is what she did. She went out, she sneaked out, she's pulled the rug back to take a picture for me so I can share it with you. I got hold of the company and said, I'd like to buy the rug, please. Certainly. No problem. Sent me a picture of it. No grey alien. It's been replaced by an Eskimo. So this is what's going on. It's not what they call the drip drip of disclosure. This is to program young children and young minds so that when and if they decide they want to pretend we have an alien invasion and they want to bring martial law in, that age range has a framework in which it can operate. These pictures wouldn't be possible unless there were real people out there determined to get the truth out. After a while, I went and did a number of interviews, gave up with the BBC simply because they're just such a mouthpiece of the government. And then I did the breakfast programme today, Holly Willoughby and Schofield. And that was very interesting because I was asked to do 2 drawings of aliens, one reptilian, one mantid, or mantis in the American. And I was told that they weren't allowed to show the reptilian, but they could show that one. And when I asked why, and they said, we just don't know, we've just been told we can't put the reptilian picture up. So, I did the show, and I have to say, Paul Schofield is a wonderful person. He's very enlightened, he understands about reincarnation, and off camera, we had a very, very frank and interesting discussion. I got a lot of time for him, but of course he has a job that he has, and he can't say anything that we would say here, simply because he would just find himself retired. And then the game changer, I was invited to the radar base at Fylingdales, the second most top secret base in the world. It's called RAF Fylingdales, but obviously it's run by the Americans. It's a 3-phased array radar that looks all around the Earth, officially to a distance of 12,000 miles, unofficially probably to the moon. It's told that it's to track nuclear missiles. It can do that. But actually what it does do is take photographs. It takes pictures. It can take photographs out to 250,000 miles away. So if an alien spacecraft or something is at the moon, this will take a picture. And when you go into the control room, these are official pictures, and very assiduously you cannot see all the monitors on the wall. They've obviously kept that down. But basically, to the right, as you're looking, is a glass partition where the Americans are, and there is a code lock on the door, and when there is an unidentified flying object, it actually comes up as UFO on the screens that you can't see here. The protocol is that all of the British guys stand up, walk out the room. The Americans press the key lock, come out and take control of this facility. This is exactly what happened at Jodrell Bank in 1969, the supposed moon landing. But here, what happens is the Americans run it, do what they need to do, give the all clear, they go back behind their glass partition, lock the door. So the British guys are sitting here, and the 3-hour tour I had, and you see the glass panel and the 2 Yanks. The Yanks run 12-hour shifts, they have a different shift system to the British. And you can pick up the frustration from these British guys. They're very open. The publicity doesn't say anything about that, but these men were telling me. And I've got very little time now for forums and blogs. And of course people were saying, well, you never went there. Just copying the press. Until the press went and phoned up the community section of their base who confirmed I did. So I tend to bring the presentation medal that I was given, and you can come and have a look at that. There's a limited edition, I think that's number 68 of worldwide edition of 500, which I was given for the 3-hour tour. Yes, people don't listen to me. I never said that I babysat John Lennon's children. I babysat his father's children, the second group. So when I was 15 years of age, prior to that, 1967, 68, I met John Lennon. This was before the days of Yoko. And I don't really know why I met him. I was with my mother and several people. I had a really interesting talk. I can remember I found it very hard to understand John's accent. I'll tell you that he was a very lovely man. He was very kind. He seemed to get on better with children and animals. We talked about stamp collecting. I, at that age, was collecting stamps, and I had a Stanley Gibbons stamp album. And he had exactly the same stamp album. And he was telling me that on the front of Stanley Gibbons' stamp album, you had the two stamps, one was King and Queen, and he'd drawn a beard and a pipe coming out of the Queen's mouth, because he was really anti-authority even back then. So we had a good laugh about that, and I was really young. So many years later, my mother said to me, "You remember John Lennon?" "Yes." "And you remember Freddie? If you were friends with, you called him Freddie. You remember Freddie? Well, they'd like you to look after the children. They're going out." And I just accepted that. And my mother said, "Well, I'm not invited, you're just going to look after them." So we went to the house for the children to meet me first. Pauline is the second wife, was the second wife of Freddie Lennon, Pauline Lennon, and she'd done us a meal. And she was a lecturer at what was then Brighton Polytechnic and is now Brighton University or Sussex University. But her interest was astrology. She taught astronomy, but she was interested in astrology. And she had Whitaker's almanacs from about 1899, 3 feet high, piles all over the place. This was the flat that John Lennon had bought them. And she said, "I want you to look after the children." That's all she said. And she did this meal, spaghetti bolognese. So she brought out my mother's plate, Freddie Lennon's plate, and then said to me, "No, I know you won't eat this in public, so I've done you something different." So she turned up with a plate with raw mince on it for me, and said, "The only question is, do you want a fork or will you use your fingers?" So this woman had a really clear idea of the sort of person that she thought I was. A week later, went down, looked after them. And I'm obviously going to protect the children because they do not want publicity. But the elder one did wake up, and we had a long talk. He was about 6 years old or 7 years old, and he said, "Do you like music?" "Yes." Asked me which composer. I told him, "No, I don't know that one." "But do you like Mozart or Beethoven?" So on, Mozart. So here was a 6 or 7 year old boy, one of Freddie Lennon's sons, who then played one of the concertos with no music. So I was very privileged to actually see that. And then about just after midnight, Freddie Lennon and Pauline arrived. Freddie just sat down, got his newspaper out, and Pauline, I said to Pauline, "Oh, it's no problem, everything's been fine." And she said, "Well, of course I knew it would be." Now, I think I would be, if I got back, I think I'd go up and check my children. They weren't bothered. Now, at the time I accepted that, now I know different. Pauline was clearly into astronomy and astrology, and I think I had got there at a very crucial time of some planet connections. They wanted this energy that resides in this body with their children at that time. I don't have a problem with that. We won't carry on, there's more to that, but I won't carry on. You're familiar with this picture, are you? Are you familiar with it? All right. Rebecca. I'm going to pass that round for me. Well, I'm going to pass round one for you. And the story on this is that they were drugged. I know they were drugged. And they were manipulated to try to hook in satanic energy with the young people because they had such a great following. So it was called the Butcher album, or the Butcher label. And it consists of meat from a butcher's shop with babies' plastic dolls' heads and bodies laid about them. Absolutely and totally disgusting. Now, this picture, which appeared on the album, which is coming round, you can have a look at, was about the 50th shot, because they were incapable of getting the Beatles to smile. Not surprising, really. Within a week and a half of its release in America, it was pulled, and I'm sorry I've got the letter and I forgot to bring it, from, is it APNR, which the company does it? Capitol, from Capitol Records, saying that this was meant as a pop art, and it's not very, very good, and we're withdrawing it very quickly. However, because there are good people everywhere, the photographs that were not used didn't get destroyed and actually have been leaked. And this is a fantasy cover, in the sense that this was never released, but is released by what we call people who are white hats, people who want the truth to come out. And these are real pictures, the ones they never accepted. I'm going to pass that around as well. So why would you do it? You do it because these guys were a phenomenal band, and they were capable of influencing, energetically wise, young people all over the globe. So why don't we get in a sacrifice and get sacrifice in there and get the energy in there. It's absolutely horrendous, but was caught out. So I'm not doing this to traumatize you. I'm showing you what goes on and how we have to be aware of it, and just feel sorry for the people who would dream up something like this. Right, Brit exit. Okay, I'm going to take some time on it, because for those of you who don't know, I was a Hackney Labour councillor. I served in Kings Park Ward, Kingsmead, that's the Hackney Marshes, from 1994 to 1999. I was one of only 3 Labour councillors who was returned with an increased majority when we stood for a second term of office. And I believe that I was the only Labour councillor to achieve 80 or 85% of the total vote. This isn't ego. I'll tell you why I'm giving you these figures in a minute. The leader of the Liberal Democrat group came up to me and said, I can't beat you, I'm not even going to put a candidate up against you. The leader of the Tory party, who was a guy called Councillor Eric Ollerenshaw, said to me, it's our policy to contest every seat. We know we can't beat you, we're just going to run a paper campaign against you. The reason was, not because my red was deeper red than anyone else, was because I actually, after I got elected the first time, I went round to people's flats and homes and thanked them for voting for me. I used to actually go to see people and talk to them. Hackney was the second borough in all of England, actually, to transfer council housing, not to a private landlord, but to social housing. It was my ward. We did it because we didn't have any money, and I said it was absolutely totally disgusting to leave good honest people in crap accommodation. Ridiculous. So, but I insisted that we had a plebiscite, we had a referendum, and people voted to be transferred to a housing association. I don't have any problem with marijuana, I have a problem with crack, and the ward I represented had a very serious incident with crack. And I worked with the local police force. I got a little bit too close, I got my front windscreen knocked out with a shotgun. But the difference is that I brought some change. So because I wasn't the usual politician in Hackney Town Hall, collecting his expenses and just falling asleep, I was returned with an increased majority. And that to me was more important than winning the first time, because when you stand again, you are judged against what you did. So I hope that the words I'm going to tell you now about Brit exit might mean something to you, because I'm a person who lived in a multicultural community, absolutely loved it, but had to leave for work reasons, and now live in an area that hates Europe. So you're going to get 2 aspects. So I hope that that will be helpful if you choose to listen. Britain out of Europe. All right. We know that the elite are a power system, but they're not just one group, they're fractured. I want you to imagine the very, very top of a pyramid. You might be surprised to know that that lot wanted Britain out of Europe. The power of media is important. Why on earth did the BBC and all the major newspapers run day after day after day pictures of migrants forcing boundaries? They did it because they were playing to the racist vote, Where are those pictures now? When you put the tally on, we don't see it because the job's done. So 95% of the elite wanted to keep Britain in Europe, but the very people at the top wanted Britain out. Do you know that George Soros, the man who broke the Bank of England, made a 15% return on his bet? He bet that Britain would leave, and so did the Rothschilds. So they made a good killing on that. So people don't put images on newspapers and television time and time again without a reason, and that is to play to the exit voters. Now that means that all the other elite have been stabbed in the back, and that's why the political system is falling apart in this country, because the top tier have completely done a volte-face. That's why they're so all falling apart. Boris, do you know who's with him? Rothschild. Would you like to come up and get a present? Come on. Right, I'll keep talking, just choose one now. Boris was quite happy not to run. People say he was stabbed in the back. Yes, he was. But the point is, whoever is the Prime Minister during this phase will never be a Prime Minister again. And Boris is young enough to hope he'll come back later on. So Boris did his job. This is the traditional pyramid. I used a pyramid at the talk that Kerry organised in Watford. This is slightly different. This doesn't have the Queen on the top. And it's just a representation of how we have all of us, as everyone in this room on the ground floor. You have different organisations, whether that's the church, whether it's the media, and so you go up to the layers of control until you get what we call the Council of 13. The majestic 12 aren't really 12, they're 19 people. So although the numbers here may not be accurate, it's a representation that there is a power structure, and the higher to the top you go, then the more authority you wield. This is in Israel, and there are monuments like this all over the world. That's the symbol. We know who that is, don't we? Yeah. Do you want to get a present? But this symbol isn't just modern and used here. That's a picture you will not see unless you really, really look. This is very... I've got some pictures that you just can't find. Once they come on screen and it goes YouTube, then people put them on. Here's a picture of Hitler pre-war giving the Illuminati sign. We're going to talk about him in a minute. Who's that? Angela Merkel. I'm very disappointed in Angela Merkel, actually. It's a pleasure. There's no mistake here. The planet is feminine. Hillary Clinton will be the next president. Female. Angela Merkel, Germany, female. Theresa May, Britain, female. The three most important witches on the planet. It is the three witches. The Earth has a natural sine wave, a biorhythmic energy. The planet Earth is divine feminine. So what the elite are trying to do is to hook in feminine energy at the three most important places, and therefore try to mask, and in the hope that that will win them through. This has all been organised. That's why you have the three women. I'm going to have some fun now. I can do this because I'm a Jew. You couldn't do what I'm going to do now if you weren't a Jew. I'll take questions at the end. Why is she dressed in black? This picture here is 1925, when Hitler was practicing some moves in front of his photographer to see how it looked from a distance. What is this about? I just wanted to show you that. The picture on the left is the last picture of Hitler in a military role. The picture on the right is reputedly, and by good standards, the very last photograph of Adolf Hitler. But are they the same person? There's the one picture. There's the second picture. Look at his ear. Have a good look at that ear. Oops. People's ears are different. As far as I'm concerned, as far as my grandfather and my mother were concerned, Hitler never died in the bunker. Hitler got the heck out of there. and he had a number of body doubles. My belief, and it's my opinion, is that this guy on the right is the double that was actually shot, the body was burned. The guy on this side is the original Hitler who made it to Argentina. Okay? Alright, Adolf Hitler and his father. I believe that Adolf Hitler's father was fathered himself by a Rothschild. We had a conference that Kerry organised in Watford, and we learnt that the Tavistock Institute had opened in 1911. Who knows when the Federal Reserve Bank was opened? You now will win a prize. Right, so Tavistock Institute, 1911, very, very good on hypnotherapy and things worse than that. And then the Fed opened 1 year before Second World War. That's not a coincidence. It was all run by the Rothschilds and planned by the Rothschilds. At the end of the Second World War, not one bomb fell on the Ford factory in Berlin. Not one bomb fell on IG Fairbairn. So you have absolute carpet bombing devastation, yet these two factories untouched. Leeds Town Hall not bombed. Does anybody know why Leeds Town Hall was never bombed? Nobody, no prizes to give away. Adolf Hitler wanted to move his headquarters to Leeds. That's not well known, is it? It's because there's an energy line, and just because someone doesn't eat meat and doesn't drink alcohol doesn't mean that they're not a member of the bad magician side. And so he planned to set up his base in Leeds Town Hall because there's a very powerful energy line coming through there. And he gave the Luftwaffe, Hermann Göring, absolute explicit instructions not to bomb that area at all. So let's have a look quickly at Adolf Hitler. End of the First World War, he gets mustard gas, but gets hysterical blindness. Doesn't actually go blind because of the gas. It goes blind because Germany surrendered. But he believes it was the gas. Now let's remember that Hitler's father was fathered by a Rothschild. Hitler and 6 others get sent from Germany to Britain. This is not, and you won't find this, sent to Britain to have mind work done to cure his hysterical blindness. I believe this is where the demigod was programmed to create the Second World War. And Hitler lived in Liverpool for 6 months. Right, testing you. Who's that? No. No. We're doing well. I'm going to go home with some presents. No, you're getting close with Himmler. No, it's not Hess. Come on. No. Right, I'm tough. It's a horrible, horrible, evil man called Reinhard Heydrich, who was in charge of the SD, and my German coordinator's not here, but it stands for the Sicherheitsdienst, which was the intelligence service of Hitler. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because he was assassinated by Czechoslovak secret agents trained by what became MI5. And that's the car. What actually happened was he was driving along. They knew exactly his route, and a hairpin bend, the car slowed down. The guy jumped out with a Sten machine gun, which predictably jammed. Instead of ordering the car to drive on, Heydrich started to shoot back, and then the second agent threw a bomb in the car. What I understand is that Heydrich had a document showing that Hitler had Jewish ancestry. Now, whether Heydrich was just getting insurance for himself, or whether he was going to go and destroy the document, I don't know. But I do believe that this was a joint operation to silence him. And if you look in your history books, there are very, very few successful assassination attempts, and that's just not out there, this. So this is the first time this has been discussed. Right, President Putin. I could talk about aliens as much as I like, and the Labour Party had no problem with me. When I attacked a senior Tory government minister live on television, I was only having the right to reply because he had made some comment about me being, involved with aliens. And my view, and I said to the 3 or 4 million audience, was, why didn't he attack me on my policies? Why is he attacking me personally? Why doesn't he criticised the number of wheelie bins that are emptied or the street lights that aren't working. So I came under a huge amount of pressure politically when I talked about Putin. And a senior member of the Labour Party in the town I live in, Whitby, her name is Diana. Hello, Diana. Diana was on the NEC, National Executive of the Labour Party, and she gave her seat up for Tony Robinson of Time Team fame. And somebody leant on Diana, and Diana was saying, you can't be doing this, you can't be saying that Putin's okay. We can't be having that, we can't be having a well-respected Labour politician saying that Putin's all right. And then, do you know what she did? She went round to try to deselect me. I know that because everyone phoned me up and said that Diana's going around basically trying to deselect you because you are speaking well of Putin. I'm not a member of the Labour Party now because I let my membership lapse. I actually found that at the present time to be a member of a political party is not consistent with being truthful. So let's have a look at President Putin. This is why they hate him, because in 1999 the gross domestic product in dollars was 195 billion. In 2013 it was over 2 trillion. I won't read them all out, but I'll just pull up a few. The national debt was 78% and he reduced it to 8%. These couldn't be achieved in the Western world. This is a massive turnaround. So what did America do? America put sanctions on Russia. It also hurt them and it hurt us. We've got more men and women out of work in the oil industry now because of the low prices. Whatever we think of oil, these are still people who need to work. And so in order to spite Putin, the United States forced the price of oil down. I'll give you an example here. Inflation before the sanctions was 6.5%. It's now 16, or it was in 15, 16.5%. The only thing that's done well is people's income and the pensions have risen. But it shows how, if you look at his track record, he was doing really well, and then when sanctions hit. So this is nothing to do with Putin being squirreling away money or embezzlement. It's because of the sanctions. So let's get that out there. The elite absolutely hate Putin. Why do they hate him? Look at this. You won't find this anywhere. Those of you who understand the Palladian soul will know that Palladian people are very connected to the oceans, the water and dolphins. I'm very grateful to the person that privately gave me this picture. These are pictures you won't see on the news. And this is the Australian Prime Minister making a present of a koala. People like animals, and Putin has done a lot for his country which is not being reported, and you don't get the truth. Well, of course we don't get the truth. And I have said it, and I'm going to say it again, that 2 years ago some very crazy psychopaths wanted the Third World War, and the way they did that was to hack into the secure internet line under the Ukraine, knowing that the Russian intelligence agency would break into that VPN line, and the false information was that Britain had targeted its nuclear missiles on Russian cities. They hoped that he would respond and we would have a Third World War. He's an intelligent man, he didn't do that, and if you check your history, go online, he responded with a massive military exercise off Antarctica. So that's how he responded. He hasn't done what they wanted to do. And the reason why? Because the Rothschilds were kicked out of Russia. Putin removed the Rothschild banking system from Russia. And that's why they can't control him, because his money is not coming via that way. Recently, Putin made statements about George Soros and referred to him as "you sly old dragon." He also said that most of the families that control the Western world are only partly human and belong to blood cults. He doesn't. You've just seen the picture of him with the dolphins. You try and find someone who's got a lot of reptilian energy, go swim with a dolphin. The dolphins will kill him. So, Mr. Obama, lots and lots of fun jokes about him and his supposed disclosure. And good old Hillary Clinton now saying, if you elect me, I will disclose. They all do it. I don't know why they do it. Another picture you won't see very much, Putin on horseback. And here's George Soros, the sly old dragon. Very interesting, when the Prime Minister of Israel walked out of a cell, in the cell was a ex-CIA agent who'd been spying for Mossad. And basically what he said was, well, once we squeeze all we can out of the United States, it can try and blow away. So you have to understand that Israel has its own connection to off-planet entities. Israel is independent almost of anything else. I don't know about a chosen people, but I certainly know that all the countries in the world are very, very careful with Israel because their connections to off-planet is so strong that nobody really wants to involve with them. That's why that tiny little country is still with us. I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply. Nathan Rothschild. So it doesn't matter what politician you are. You know, you look at Jeremy Corbyn at the moment being hammered left, right, and centre. If you look at the resignations, all of the people who resigned were either very, very close friends of Tony Blair or members of the Fabian Society. If you are elite, you don't just control the establishment party, you control any party that could realistically win an election. David Rockefeller, some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterising my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic picture. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and I'm proud of it. So this one world government is not a joke. It's not something that just does the rounds. These people have been talking about it for ages. So there we are. Even in Game of Thrones, we can use that in there, can't we? Although one world government isn't really coming, it's coming in their minds because we're not going to let it arrive. Who's that? Oh, who is that? Anybody heard of Mr. B, the gentleman rhymer? Oh my goodness me! Right, Mr. B, the gentleman rhymer. He dresses as if he was establishment, but he's incredibly anti-establishment. And there's one line to his song, which is I can't remember. I think it's from the I Say album, and it basically says that freedom of speech is not freedom of expression. When the line has been breached, you better learn a lesson. So freedom of speech is not freedom of expression. Democracy means you go and place a vote in a box. It doesn't mean it's counted. I know of at least 3 GS4 security vans which contained around about 340,000 ballot papers over the last 5 years have been hijacked and never found. In the name of God, who would hold up a security van containing hundreds of thousands of ballot papers and then run off with them? Now, whether it's true or not about the last election, the exit vote, just to show you the disaffection between the North, the Midlands, and some parts of the South. On social media, the message went out: do not put your cross to leave in pencil. Put it in an indelible marker pen. Now, I'll be honest with you, I know a lot about politics, and I always use an indelible marker pen when I put my vote. I won't say why I do that, but I'll just let you understand that. So whether it's true or not, that's the perception. And I did say I would talk a little bit about North and South. The vast majority of people in the North and the Midlands who voted to leave Europe did so because they are utterly and totally separated from Westminster politics. They're utterly separated from the elite. They feel totally forgotten. Many of them have friends and family who work in London, and they get the change of that. I'm not saying it's easy here, but what I am saying is a lot harder, and people don't listen to them. And what the elite have done is miscalculated, because what they've suddenly found is that a vast number of British people are prepared to go against the line. Now, yes, some of those people who voted to exit are racist. Let's make it clear, some of them did vote because they don't like migrants, they don't like immigrants, and they're just racist. But I know, because I live there, the vast majority did so because they are totally frustrated and feel separate. That's a dreadful situation for a country to be in. You have 8 million people in London who have a culture all of their own. You go 50 miles up the road and it's a completely different culture in that respect. So we need to understand that the country is divided. I know that's not a popular thing to say, but it is divided. Okay, gold is money, everything else is credit, 1912. Oh, that's not far before the First World War. Do we know that the 3 major men who could have prevented the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank all died on the Titanic? Or what was proposed to be the Titanic. I don't believe the Titanic was sunk, it was its sister ship. But the 3 major guys, Benjamin and Jacob, who would have voted at the board to say no, we don't want the Fed, all wiped out. This is one of the most sombre statements ever in history. Woodrow Wilson, a very decent, one of the best presidents that America has had in many ways. You can read it yourself, so I'll let you just read that. How terrible to be someone who went into politics for the right reasons to find that you've got absolutely no power at all. Who is the man on the left? Who said Lincoln?
Lincoln.
You're present, yeah. Right, both were shot, both were murdered. I don't like the word assassinated, murder. They're both murdered. Of course they were murdered. And both really wanted to stop the elite controlling the banking system. I'm going to read this because it's small. In America this would be very well known, and I wouldn't have to read this out, but we are surprisingly uneducated about some of the most important statements that American statespeople have made. I'm going to read it. Right. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence on infiltration instead of invasion, subversion instead of elections, intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific and political operations. So what we call the military-industrial complex. So here's a man who, unlike anyone else, was actually going to try and dismantle it. Now many people say, he was murdered because he was going to talk about UFOs. I'd like to think that, but actually that's not the truth. The reason that he was got rid of was because he said this: there is a plot in this country to enslave every man, woman and child. Before I leave this high and noble office, I intend to expose this plot. And 7 days later he was murdered. That was the reason. He basically served notice that he was going to go to the public. Remember, the American people loved this man. It's very popular. And basically he was going to go and just tell them the way it was. So he paid with his life.
Simon, I just want to say that Mark Richards says the plot he's talking about was mind control of the children.
Right.
And the people, but concentrating on the mind control of children and in school.
Right, well that plays really nicely with the images that I showed earlier of the spacecraft that have been recreated, and showing how if you get to the children and you create a hook in that person's mind, you can activate it later. And this one got a laugh at the last conference, and Rothschild's wife saying, well, if my sons didn't want a war, there would never be a war. Interesting, isn't it? How are we doing for time, Kerry? We've got half an hour left, or what?
12.
But
It's
17.
12.
Quarter past
Oh,
six.
okay, so you have
15?
15 more minutes
Fine.
If you want to go over
Yeah,
the
yeah,
points.
I'm going to shoot on. of our creatures. Some bones. I'm just going to go quickly on. City of London, it won't happen, but the plan is to take England out of the Europe Union, but leave the City of London in. That won't happen. But that was a serious plan that they were looking at. I always call City of London the Tower of Babel. I'll just talk about Iceland. For those of you who don't know, because it was never put on the television, the Icelandic government was physically removed. The people stormed the Parliament building, grabbed their members of Parliament and threw them out on the street. So we all heard about the Icelandic banks, but we didn't actually hear about the revolution that occurred. The constitution that makes up the Icelandic government was written on Facebook. So if you were 14 years of age, you could actually contribute on Facebook. That's the difference now. Basically, this is the guy, Hadur, who helped to free the people. And in 2008, the citizens forced the resignation of both the Prime Minister and the government. The Prime Minister was indicted. 200 criminal charges were filed against the bankers. A number of members of Parliament were also found guilty. And they chose people with no political affiliation to form the government. Quite right too. These are two bankers who were jailed. I know it's only 4.5 years, but the fact is these were people who were jailed. And of course there's no Rothschild Bank in Iceland. It's really interesting. The reason I'm showing this horrible, nasty man is because I bought from a shop a bottle of Nestle water without realising it was Nestle. And when I looked at it, it had fluoride in it. And at the bottom it said bottled at Coca-Cola. Isn't that interesting? So, I'm going to try and do one here, see if this will work. If it doesn't, it really doesn't matter.
I didn't drink it.
Poured it down the sink. Oh, I can't make it work. I can't be bothered. Right, okay, listen, I'm happy to take a few questions. We don't really seem to have given many presents away. I don't want to have to go back with them. I'm happy for any questions for the last 10 minutes or so. Okay, so...
When you said about the City of London, not the plan not going that way, how are you so sure? What's the information?
Well, the information I get doesn't come through the newspapers. However, I understand that one of the key people who's been approached is your new mayor. So why don't you go in Freedom of Information Act, write to Sadiq Khan and ask him actually what his views are on it. I think that'd be very interesting. But it won't work simply because both Frankfurt and Bonn and Switzerland are really keen to see the City of London out of Europe, because then they can become the financial centres. Another reason why Brexit was organised at the very top, the Rothschilds are moving to Switzerland permanently. They want to live there. And if you phone up the Schoss house, where the Swiss headquarters is, no one's answering the phones. Oh, another question. Hi.
Oh, it's a personal question. In my 20s, and another girlfriend I found out was similar. We used to have visions of something that called itself the triad. So I'm talking about in the 80s. Very much in the dark light, inner stuff. But I found someone else who's similar. I just wondered if you knew anything about that.
There are a number. Can I ask you, do you channel? Are you psychic? Do you channel?
I don't know if I would qualify myself as a channel.
Okay, but you receive psychic messages.
Yeah,
that's fine. No, I expected that when you told me the triad. What happens is that when there are good people, and you are a good person, and I'm not bullshitting you, you're a good person. When good people are on the planet, they will be attacked is probably not the right word, but they will receive information from an organisation in an attempt to get that person to form a group and then try and do a more channeling. And I'll just blanket scattergun approach to see what they get. It's a organisation linked to the Aldebaran group, which is a faction, a splinter group from the Palladian group. George Adamansky, people like that who had alien encounters. If you go on Google, YouTube, he took lots of pictures, and the CIA set up they bought a house opposite where he lived and just filmed him 24/7. It's the same alien group that he was interacting with, and what they'll do is they'll try and connect with people who are psychic and see if they can sort of take control of them. But you used the words, it was dark, so that means that your higher self, your soul, told you that it wasn't necessarily a good source and that you wanted to keep away from it.
It was at that time you're the first person I've been able to actually verbally ask a question about it directly. But it's not now, it was there, obviously ages,
Yes.
ages.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the thing is that you have to understand that an agenda has been planned for this planet for thousands of years. And they'll just try different things. You'll have a chief executive of a sweet factory who'll say, we'll have this red sweets this year, next year we'll have blue sweets, and that's exactly the same. They'll just look. But they'll also look to see where psychic souls are incarnating on the planet, and they will then target those souls to see if they can bring them on board. But you were instinctively, naturally aware that that was an energy that you didn't want to engage with. And well done. Okay, thank you. So yes, I'm familiar with what you're talking about. Hi. Hello.
Is our higher self come down to us, or is it expanding outwards from ourselves?
Right. Everyone's view is different. I'm not here to argue with all the people on YouTube who have their own view, and this is my view, isn't it? My view is that 220,000 years ago, I would accept 250,000, but I'm saying 220,000 years ago, the human species on this planet was tricked. We are a very trusting race. We're naive, we're gentle, we don't like to think bad of people. And some DNA cells, I beg your pardon, some DNA energy strands were taken so that people on this planet were left with excuse me, enough energy to work, but not enough to question. Enough to do what you're told, but not enough to perceive the truth. And that is the situation for many people on the planet. But the law of the multiverse is that this cannot be stolen from you. It's your birthright. And so it couldn't be destroyed, so it's what we call out of phase around you. And that's why people say, ask your higher self, because it is higher than you. It's higher than you energetically, but physically it's higher than you, because it's over you. And so what we're trying to do is to encourage people to bring that energy stream back to them, because it should always be with you. We had it originally, it was taken from us. And as people reconnect their energy strands of DNA, they will become psychic, telekinetic. You'll know when someone's lying to you. You'll be able to finish someone's sentence for you. But you see, the way the elite work is that with the mobile phone, the cell phone, why would you need to be telepathic? If I took everyone's mobile phone away, the number of people who would develop naturally telepathy would increase, because you'd have to. You know, I'm of a certain age, I can remember if I was going somewhere, I'd get my map out. I don't now, of course I don't, because I've got a sat-nav. But what's happening is people are being very cleverly tricked into relying on technology. And then if you take that technology away from people... So a couple of years ago, and I haven't talked about it since, the chipping program. You know, you hold your phone in your hand all the time. So, you know, you get up to, is it £10 or £15? You can just swipe, you know, your phone, can't you, your app, and then you can pay for your coffee. The day was planned where people would say, well, why don't we just chip your hand? Then you can just put your hand straight down on the reader, and we'll do that. That's actually the plan. That is what they intend to do. And it's, you know, we all go around with our phone in our hands, it's there already. So that's the whole plan, that's why they did it. And then they'll say to you, you took part in a demonstration at Trafalgar Square 6 months ago. We're turning off your bank account. So you go to the shop and you'll be doing that, and there'll be nothing there. That's the whole point about the control system. Okay. Talk about vaccinations very quickly for a second. Did you know that the flu jab contains mercury? Some of you did, that's really good. But for most people that's absolutely shocking, because mercury is a poison. And did you know that doctors get £5 in their pocket each time they give a flu jab? No wonder there are posters up saying, come and get your flu jab, because a doctor gets £5 for that. Okay, my grandfather in 1969 said to me the major toothpaste companies were putting fluoride in, don't use it. Anyway, next question. We've got 2-3 minutes left. Hello.
Hi, I wonder if you could answer this political question. I come from Bangladesh, and maybe you've heard recently there was a terrorist attack by a very young group of young boys who we actually know of, and my son went to school with. They did the atrocity, and it was in a cafe in a major part of the capital of Bangladesh. The people who were killed, we knew of them, and we knew about the history. Basically, the people we knew, and so it was a devastating situation for us. Only recently, about 3 or 4 months ago, one of the attackers, the terrorist, was a friend of my brother's, whose brother was missing. He suddenly turned up missing since March, and unbeknownly we tried to track him. His parents were absolutely devastated, and because of that we tried to search for him. My husband went to the police and everything. The police said that I think that he has been taken by ISIS. We can't do anything about it. That same boy turned up and did the attacks. What I'm just trying to ask you, Simon, is how is it possible that these young boys who have really no political partisanship, they're just university students having a good time, they can go into a cafe and viciously attack innocent people, friends of theirs even, and then they put the gun to their heads and slit their own throats? How is that possible? And then say it in the name of, especially in a country like ours where we are doing really well economically, we are rising economically, the industries are doing well, it's becoming a viable third world nation now. But somehow or other we're always being prevented from going any further.
Okay.
And I just wonder if you knew how these boys
Thank you.
changed like that.
Thank you. Well, we already have that in history. It was called the Hitler Youth. How could 12, 13, 14-year-old boys go out and very calmly machine gun people? And it relies on mind control. Yes, there are some people who feel very disenfranchised, isolated and very angry, but that is a very small minority, and that's the image that we're given. The reality, I believe, is that people are identified and then I will go through a program of indoctrination, and that's what happens. So in a way they are victims, because what we want to do is to stop the people at the top who are doing it. And they're doing it because they wish to destabilise the society. If you fracture a society, if you destabilise it, you can then manipulate it. That's the whole point of all of these terror attacks. Interestingly enough, you've obviously heard Turkey. I bet you that's the CIA trying to overthrow the Turkish government. The reason for this is that Turkey is a vital country because one half is Muslim, one half is Christian. And that's why Turkey is in NATO, because it's a bulwark from the West's point of view against Islam. That's the whole point of it. So we talk about things that we don't see. We talk about jinn and energies. That's all very common in the East, but not allowed towards the Western part. So the reason for maintaining Turkey is because it keeps a lot of knowledge out of the West, and it's the red line for the people in the West. So that's why they try to topple the government in Turkey. Your question that you asked me is incredibly personal. I can't go any deeper because I have not experienced that, and I am not qualified to go any further with that. And also, there's so much energy around that. But what I would say to you is that I am fully aware of young people who are mind controlled to do a whole range of things against their will. And the terrible thing is, if they survive, 2 days later, they have no knowledge of what they've done. Right, I think I need to wind up because we're out of time. Can I just thank everyone very, very much? I tell you what, I really don't want to go home with these. Has anybody got a child who you allow a television in their room but they don't have a DVD? Has everybody? Come on, I've got a DVD player, I don't want it. Come here. It's only 6 months old. Come on, come have it. There you go. Of course I am. That's fine. Right, I've got some presents here. I used to be a driving instructor. These are the good L plates, the ones that are magnetic, not the ones you have to tie on. If anyone's got a youngster that's learning to drive or someone else, There you go, have those. What I'd like is, if I give these to the bar, and then maybe during the next few days you can just give them out. Is that alright? Can we do that? Hello, Miles. Where did you park?
I came by the train. That's the train in other languages.
Yeah. Right, listen, I'm delighted to meet you all. It's been really lovely. And for me, this is the first time I've spoken in public in Hackney since 1999. So, listen, God bless you all. Lovely to see you. And I know that many of you have come travel to see all the speakers, and thank you for doing that. I'm going to hang around. I will have a drink, and I will have a chat with people. So, I'm not running off straight away. Okay, thank you.